Well, welcome everyone to where are we? What is this? This is our take on it. We're featuring Slim and Shona. And Shona, how you doing? How's everything?
I'm doing good. It's
N-
New Year's Eve,
New
and
Year's Eve.
we're looking at the end of 2025. It's on the way out.
2025 is out of here almost like the umpire say at a baseball game. You're out of here.
So much
So
has happened,
so
James.
much has happened, and we'll probably kind of recap when we come back, or either just move forward, because it probably still be plenty to talk about as far as the
There will
national
be.
scene. And we're going to always have something to talk about, you and I, and with our connection with P Town and ATL, with the home base being P Town. And I see Malcolm. What a great conversation we had with some of our classmates on our last show. It's
Ain't
gotten a
God
lot of
good?
response. Yeah. So we're going to continue to bring classmates up, especially those ones that say they don't have anything to say until they get up here.
Man. Then I
We
have to
all have a
interrupt to
story.
get a word in.
Yeah, we all have a story, and that's what we like. We want people to come up here, and I've been doing this a while, and sometimes I've had guests on here in the beginning. That's you had to pull stuff out. Those yes or no answers is like a nightmare for podcasters or anybody that's interviewing somebody. So but I like when they come up here, and once they get up here, they have a lot to say. So next time we meet, Shona, it'll be the new year. It'll be 2026.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'll say this right before we get into the subject. When we were in high school, like it was 1972, didn't even think about going out of that century, until it got close. And we were going to hit, 1999, and we were going to hit 2000. And then it started
When
hitting
you
you.
thought
Wow,
the
we're
world was
going
going
to.
to end.
Yeah. They said that day, you know,
Remember
get
that?
get your stuff in order because everything's going to end, or we're going to have problems with all the internets and all that. But just didn't think about 2000. Here we are now, 26 years into, you
20.
know, a
It's
new
six.
century, a
Mm-hmm.
whole new century, and um, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. Well, want to talk about today. Of course, a lot of you know that my brother Ron Lee Goodrich passed recently, and I'm going to talk about him. First, I want to thank all the people so far who have given condolences and sent messages and everything to me since almost immediately after I put up the notice, about him, and then I ran a few different things about him and our relationship. But it all kind of started, Shona, with you know, of course, we were planning. We wanted to talk about my adoption. And I told you, I said, well, I can talk about it, but I want to include my brother because he can fill in a lot of things that I couldn't fill in before the adoption, and how it was for us. And me being the youngest, I still experienced some of that, but not as much as the older three brothers did. So we wanted to have him on along with me talking about the adoption because it would mean a lot more if we had what went on prior to me being adopted, and he could fill that in because I really couldn't. I couldn't remember things, and I talked about this before about being young and just remember waking. It's just like Groundhog Day, the movie. You wake up and the same thing keeps happening. And it was like that, not quite like that, but you know, when I went to bed, often I had the same dreams over and over again, which
Mm-hmm.
probably is not too strange, but having them throughout your life, throughout all the different stages in life. When I was in high school with you, Shona, some nights I
Yeah.
went to bed and had these same dreams, and I
No
still never
clue.
thought. Yeah,
that.
still never thought about this is strange, and probably therapy would have helped, but nobody was thinking about that back then. Like when you told me back in
Oh,
'77,
no.
James, '77 therapy. But that probably would have helped me if I had have said something to somebody. But I didn't. I never said anything to anybody. I just dealt with that internally. Thought it was strange sometimes, and then I said, okay, maybe this is just because I'm thinking it's just dreams. It's just dreams. So, all the way through college, even after a dance at the center, Innocent Center at VUU, I go to sleep, have those dreams. And they were dreams about having chickens in the yard, uh, and hearing this loud voice, which I thought was a giant man. And I'll tell you what happened with that later. But I had these same dreams, and they were it was maybe 4 or 5, and they just repeated themselves throughout my life up until I was 21. I recently married. Well, I've been married for about a year, and we were expecting Jamie. And uh, we had moved back home because we needed to be around family. She was expecting, and her family lived in Memphis, so we were the closest from Richmond. So I came back home, and we had a house. So we lived in an older house on Effingham Street. It was a family home, so it was easy for us to move in there until we got ourselves together. But anyway, so one day there was a knock on the door, and my wife Dan, Jamie's mother, went to the door and called
Out of the clear
called
blue.
back. Huh?
Just out of the clear blue.
Yeah,
Not
out of the clear blue. And
okay.
I was upstairs. She said she called Slim, and Ron told this story the last time we had an interview, and said, Slim, somebody's at the door to see you. And I think she recognized the favor right away, but she had no idea about it. Far as she knew, her father-in-law was my dad. And which he was.
Oh,
My parents, adopted parents, and that's the only time I'm gonna say adopted parents. They were my parents because they raised me, but I also was blessed to have other parents, birth parents. So
but she did
nothing's
not know
wrong with
you. She did not know you were adopted.
no, she did not know, and he, no, well, I didn't know to tell her, and I think she hadn't been around here where anybody told her. But people around here knew, but they didn't tell me. So,
So
they won't
at
don't
this
tell her.
point, you didn't know that you were adopted.
Didn't have a clue.
Wow.
And just think about that. Uh, Going 21 years and not knowing. And, we've had adopted person on here before. And it's quite common nowadays. And even the professionals suggest that you tell the kid, as the adoptee, as early as possible, and let
Okay.
them know that that however you have to do it, that they were loved twice, when they were brought into the world, and when someone decided to bring them into their world as an adoptee. So so they can know, and you know later on they can look up their lineage. But anyway, but when
Look
I
at the
was
time.
adopted, go ahead.
Look at the times though. Back then,
Yeah,
that
the
concept
times were
wasn't
different
so
back then.
prevalent. Families hid secrets.
Yeah, all kinds of things. Just like the daughters having children out of wedlock and might have been
They
in
would
high
send
school,
them
and the daughter
away.
goes down south and comes
And
back and with a baby sister. But the times were different, so I think even the word adoption wasn't used that much. And later I found out that there's quite a few people were adopted that I knew, and they didn't know either.
okay.
So, but that was just the time. So I didn't know. So this guy uh, comes to the door. I go to the door, and right away I noticed the similarities. I mean, he looked
You
like me, but
connected.
you could, yeah, that connection was immediate. And you've been places and you see somebody that favors you, or somebody tells you, "I just saw your twin," but they're no relation. So, but he told me, he said, I'm your brother. And most people probably would have fainted. And something inside of me was sort of like it was relieved because, I never talked to myself about it, or I never really thought about it. Maybe I'm adopted, you know, that never came to mind, but I always thought something was going on. Hey, Keith Brown, thanks for
Really?
watching. I always thought something was going on that I couldn't explain. But seeing him and him saying that, it just like a relief came all through me,
Wow.
through my body. And he he was living in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania then, and he was home to visit his grandmother, my grandmother as well, and my
Which
mother's
you knew
mother.
nothing about at the time.
Knew nothing about it, but all these people knew me. I'm walking around Norcom. I'm walking around Portsmouth, and all these people remind me to bring that up again, how that happened. But anyway, we kind of immediately connected, and I invited him in, and he sat down and started telling me the whole thing. He thought I knew the story. He thought I knew I was adopted. He had no idea that I didn't know, especially at that age. And
Wow.
he talks about Ron. I'm talking about Ron, my brother.
Yes.
He talks about how bad he felt after that because you know, he thought about, wow, what if somebody came to me after 21 years and just told
Yeah.
me they were my
The
brother?
way he presented it, and you had no
Yeah,
clue. Wow.
he had no idea. He thought he was just uh, fulfilling something that he always wanted to do, and maybe I was going to accept it or not. But he had to find out. But he had no idea that I didn't know that I was adopted or didn't know him or my three other brothers. That it was a total of four brothers. And let me, while I'm mentioning the four brothers,
So he was one. So there were five of you.
no, four total.
Wow.
That
Look
was,
at that.
and that's me on the end, um, Ron in the middle. He was a little chubby then, and Shelby, and then Butch, who was John Jr., who's named after our father. And
Okay.
Shelby has passed away, who is next to Ron, but I got a chance to meet him. And one of the things, I got a chance to meet all of them. But of course, Ron and I were the closest. We were the closest in age. Ron was born in 1951. I was born in 1954. We were closest in age, and the two other brothers were older. Now it's just the oldest and the youngest brothers left. But uh,
So where is John Jr.? Have you spoken with him?
all of them end up in Harrisburg. You know,
Hmm.
even though it was a hard childhood for them, mainly caused by the father John, who was you know was a different guy back then. But you know, he ended up turning his life around, becoming a Jehovah Witness, and reached out to his boys. And when his boys were having trouble here in Portsmouth, you know, each one of them probably will say the direction they were going in, you know, it might not have been the greatest for them. So
They were acting out.
each one of them ended up going and staying with him. Uh, Except for Ron. Ron was going to Norcom, but he got drafted out of Norcom and went into the service. And once he served the country, he didn't come back to Portsmouth. He went to Harrisburg. And look, and here's his amazing thing. He tells this story. He actually, when he was still here in Portsmouth, he actually went before my father, who was a substitute judge and happened to be sitting on the bench that day. And he said when he went before my father, he think my father knew because my father looked at him and just dismissed it and said, "Don't come before me again." And isn't that
Wow.
amazing? Isn't that
Wow.
amazing? And the
So
the
for those
story just
people who
gets
don't know, your father was
was
your
a substitute judge and
yes.
an attorney here in the city of Portsmouth, long time civil rights, but
So I'm trying to
he
follow.
wasn't a full time judge. But so
Okay.
this is how amazing this is. He wasn't a full time judge, so he wasn't on the
Right.
bench all the time.
What are
He
the
was filling
odds
in
that he would
for
be
another
there
judge
that day?
that
Um,
day, and you know
so
another
John
judge
Jr.
might have given him some time, or it might have been, you know, whatever he did, it might have been worse. So
Yeah.
that's when he decided to leave Portsmouth. I think he did come back here after the service. I'm not sure, but that was one of the things that got him out of Portsmouth. He had that opportunity uh, to leave, and so that was crazy. But let me go back a little bit, Shona,
Okay.
about being young and growing up. As a not known as an adoptee, as what I call it, a pretty privileged life. So, and I have a picture of me that looks similar to that, but that's Ron, about 7 years old, I believe.
Wow.
And the reason I'm showing this picture because when I was growing up here in Truxton, and I'd be out playing, I guess I might have been, if he was 7, I might have been 4 or something like that, because like 3 year difference.
Yeah.
And out in the neighborhood, and in the neighborhoods, just like the neighborhood you grew in, we had a lot of people riding around selling vegetables and watermelons and everything like that on trucks.
Mr. Fitz.
Mr. Fitz, and then the individuals that just sold, and especially watermelons. Those guys come out, watermelons. One day I was standing out there, and this watermelon truck came by and stopped to, you know, take a plug out. Remember how they used to take a plug out the watermelons
Yes.
and let you try it? They were so confident that watermelon was sweet and good. But so he stopped to let somebody taste the watermelon. This young boy was on the truck, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, I'm your brother." And then the truck, got the guy. I said, "Oh, okay." I got on my bike, confused, and rode home. And I was kind of excited and confused. And I told my mother, "Hey, I just saw my brother." And the look on her face, of mad at me or you know, made me say, "I'm not bringing that up again."
Okay.
So I didn't, and it wasn't talked about. I'm sure she told my dad about it, but it wasn't talked about. But that wasn't the end of it. Back then we would go to the Y from the different neighborhoods. I remember seeing that's before I really met Big Red, Michael Davis. I remember seeing him at the Y. So people would come to the Y on Chestnut Street from all different neighborhoods. So I'm
Wow.
at the Y, and here comes this young guy again. I see him at the Y, and he comes up to me and
Same
say,
guy.
"Hey, remember me? I'm your brother." And of course, I went home and told that again, and he laughs at this. He said, "Never saw me again at the Y." When I
Okay.
went home and told my parents that I saw this guy again, and I think he's my brother, and I don't remember what they did, but he says from that day on, he didn't see me at the Y anymore. So they probably said, "Okay, that's it." Because I think what my dad was doing at the time, because her and Ron tell the stories of how they grew up and what was going on, and going from foster home to foster home because of the way it was in the house. With the dad being in jail and fighting and threatening the mother and stuff like. There wasn't a healthy environment, so we were all in foster homes, but they couldn't find a foster home that would take care of 4 boys. Because most of those foster homes already had kids in there. So
That's
we were all at different times in different foster homes, and the oldest boy was aging out. So then he was out there, you know, well, I don't want to say in the streets, but I don't know his full story. I have to talk to him about it. But he aged out of the foster system, and then
so
it was the 3.
he's in Harrisburg now.
Yes, he's in Harrisburg now. All of them end up going to Harrisburg.
So
So
John Senior is also in Harrisburg.
yeah, well, he was up until a couple of years ago where he passed away, but he was in his
Okay.
90s when he passed away. So
Wow.
he really turned his life around and dedicated his life to his family and his boys.
That's
And
good.
I think he was rewarded with longevity to spend with those boys, with us, because he was when Ron came to the house and told me that. First thing he did was got on the phone and called John, our father, and
Yes.
and let him talk to me. And I think he was so pleased with that because I think what I was getting ready to say, what my father, I might jump around. My father was trying to keep me away from that because it was such a violent situation in that home.
They were
So he
trying to
didn't know,
protect you.
what they might do. Would they come and try to take me back? And,
Yeah, they were
so
trying
his,
to protect you.
right, they were trying to protect me. That's why I never really said, why didn't they tell me? It was
Yeah.
the times, and then they were trying to protect me from what could happen, and they had no idea because uh, it was such a strange situation to grow up in. And I forgot to say this. One of the memories too I had, along with and this was a real time memory that stuck with me. That was part of my dreams too, and I couldn't figure that out. Is being in the back of a car and driving off and seeing all these people standing there crying or whatever, and them getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was crying. I remember being crying, and Ron told me, anytime I could tell him about a dream I had, he could verify it by something that actually happened. And he was telling me that was
Wow.
the time when the social worker I was adopted and was taking me away in the car to my new home. And
So,
all I knew, I was leaving my family and I was crying, and they probably were upset too.
how old were
And
you?
that's one of the memories I remember. So,
How
but
old were you then?
I
You
really
know.
don't know.
Okay.
I,
So,
I, I think I was about under 4'3" or something like that because all the pictures that I have around here, and my parents took a lot of pictures. None of them, and they used to have the dates on them when they took them. None
yes.
of them start before 1958.
Okay.
Now, I might have been there
So,
before then, but they weren't taking pictures. Ron said it was like 18 months when they took me, and I don't know. I think I was a little older because the memories I have, but you know,
okay.
but
So, were any of your other brothers adopted, or did they all end
no,
up in foster
no,
care?
everybody ended up. I think Ron stayed the longest with uh, with a foster parent that I remember her too. I must have been there a little while with him with that particular. Her name was Miss Bracy, and with that particular foster parent, because I remembered her. I
Okay.
remembered her when I described what I remembered of her. Somebody else in my dreams, he
You
said
validated it.
that's exactly how she looked, and
Okay.
evidently that was a pleasant time because I remembered that. I don't remember John, my father. I don't remember my mother, Ruby, at all. But I can remember this lady.
So, where
So
was your
if I
mother?
can remember her, why can't I remember, so it must not have been, it must have been something I blocked out. It must have been something that was unpleasant to me to see
Okay.
that I
So,
blocked out.
where was your mother when you all went to foster care? Was she still with your dad?
No, she had left and
Okay.
went to New York because uh, she pretty much feared for her life.
Okay.
Uh, it had gotten to that point,
Okay.
and she was fearing for her life. Uh, I guess some people would say, "How can you leave four boys?" But and Ron talks about how he was bitter about that, but he
Mhm.
ended up taking care of our mother until her demise. And
Mhm.
he really looked out for her more so than any of us most of her life, even though he was bitter about what happened. That was his mother,
Yes.
and that was a testament who Ron is
Yeah.
and was. You
Yeah.
know, he just had that kind of heart, and he was the kind of person in that family, that Goodrich family. He his brother had children, in different places of the country, and
Mhm.
his mission at one time was to make sure all those children knew each other. They would had different mothers, so he had a concentrated effort to find those children and make sure they knew each other. And he was successful in doing that. And to this day, a lot of those children, I think it was two different families really.
So these
Um,
would be your first cousins.
they're first cousins of Shelby. You know, uh,
Have
the
you
next
met
to the
them?
oldest brother. Excuse me. No,
Have you
well, they
met them?
actually not cousins. They're nephews because they're my brother's children. So they're my
Oh, okay.
nephews
I thought they
and
were
nieces.
your father's brother's children. Okay.
Oh
Okay.
no, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't make
Okay.
it clear.
That's
These
okay.
were one of our brothers who was a Papa was a Rolling Stone, you know, and he had these different kids. But if it wasn't for Ron, these cousins never would have known each other. I mean,
I,
they were not cousins, brothers, half brothers, but not. We don't even use half anymore. These brothers and sisters wouldn't have known each other. He got them all together, and they know each other to this day because of that. And
I know
you
someone
know,
exactly like that too.
right, and none of them really had time, a lot of time spent with their actual father, but they had a whole lot of time with their uncle and looked up to their uncle. You know,
Same
and he was
scenario.
like a father figure. So that explains a lot about Ron, and that's probably why he couldn't resist the opportunity to come and just make that connection with me.
Okay. So what happened after you had that initial
Well,
conversation? I know you. I know you didn't sleep that night.
no, well, let me tell you what happened because um, my wife at the time, Mary, called her sister because I was telling her, wow, I'm actually got brothers and this is amazing. I think it's real. But when she called her sister said, "Look, you better check into this because there's people out here that will scam you." I don't think the word scam, whatever
It
she
used
said, I
to
don't
be,
think she said
yeah.
scam. That
Try to
wasn't.
pull one over on you.
Yeah, try to pull one over on you. You don't know these people, And we said, "Well, you're right." So I decided to go and ask my parents about it.
Okay.
And it was kind of late at night, but I called them. I said, "Look, we want to come over and talk to you all about something." Uh, so we got back there, and I was kind of excited about it. Got there and we told them what had happened, and my dad just immediately got up and said, "I don't know what you're talking about," and left the room. And my mother, eventually followed. I think she wanted to get into it, but she went along with him because she did say something to me some days or weeks later, uh, but we never got into it either. So that I said, wow, I won't bring that up again because that it looked like I really hit a sore spot. And you know how amazing it is. You come back and don't say anything else about it for the
Wow.
next 20 or 30 years. It
They
never came up again.
they didn't want to lose the favor that they had for you because
Right.
they were your parents. As far as they
Yeah.
were concerned, they were your parents. Case closed.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to make clear to them if we had the conversation. Don't worry about me not ever, thinking you're my parents. It's just something that I'm excited to know
That's right.
about. And now, as I got older, I know the importance of knowing that your birthright, parents because of medical history and all
Yeah.
those other things, or,
Yes.
you don't want to marry your first cousin. But,
No. Mhm.
and that could have happened. That could have
That
happened. And
it
I'll tell you
goes.
how that could have happened because when I was in high school, I'm stepping back now. I was in high school in homeroom. This girl was in my homeroom class, and she and another girl, I was sitting up in class and they were staring at me. And I said, oh, well, these girls like me. Oh, okay. Should I make my move? And, but then the next day, she came back and said, look, I talked to Ron and he told me the whole story. I had no idea what she was talking about. She was
Oh,
Ron's girlfriend.
that's right.
She was
Because you weren't
Ron's,
21 yet, so you didn't know anything about anything yet.
didn't know anything about anything. but I played it off. I didn't say, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, yeah, that's
Right.
good." Had no idea, you
Cause,
know,
cause they tripping.
and then found out later that Ron and Sweetwolf, David Simmons, who is Daru now,
Oh, really?
were best friends growing up.
What?
And that's why I couldn't understand. One day, Sweet Wolf, we were in the same homeroom, but we weren't in the same circle. I thought Sweet Wolf one of the cool guys, and the guys that you didn't play with. Even though he was a little guy, but you didn't mess with Sweet Wolf. But anyway, one day he came up to me and patted me on the back and said, "This is my man right here." Ron had told him to look out for me. you
Wow.
know,
So
and Sweet Wolf and people watching, if you don't, think about Happy Days and the Fonz. How
yeah,
nobody messed with the Fonz. That's
that's
how
right.
Sweet Wolf was.
Right.
Nobody,
He definitely
you
had a
know,
reputation.
he had a reputation. So
So
if
Ron
you
went
were
to North.
cool with him, you didn't have to worry. But I didn't know where that was coming from.
So Ron went to Norcom, right? That's what you're saying.
He was at Norcom before I got there, and I think he either got drafted out of or he kind of stopped going and then got drafted. But he was at Norcom because he said he used to come to my basketball games.
He prob
Imagine.
he probably was in my brother's class.
Yeah, I'm sure he
My
probably
oldest
was.
brother.
And he be at the back. I think even when he wasn't in school, probably my senior year, he was coming to the basketball games. And imagine having someone, your brother, sitting up in the stands watching you play basketball or in the game or sitting on the bench, whichever way. He probably saw a lot of that.
You never
But
know.
when I got in the game, watching me play, and I had a brother sitting up there watching and didn't know. And later found out some of those guys, one of those guys on the team was my first cousin. His name was Charles Blake. And if anybody here from Norcom watching, they know who Charles Blake is. He didn't play. Not a lot of people could get along with Charles Blake because he had an attitude. And I remember we could talk. We got along, but we didn't know we were related either until years later we were grown. So that's the high school period. And of course, I didn't go back home talking about that because I had already buried that. I should have pushed the issue because I wish I had had that
But you
talk
were
with
just a
them so
kid.
I could thank them for what they did for me, outside of being my parents, but just taking me out of that situation.
You were
But
chosen.
we never had that conversation. So that would always live with me, that we didn't. Uh, but anyway, going back to Ron, and after we made that connection, it was kind of awkward at first because, he would come down and come over to the house. Well, before we did that, he took me around to all these cousins that I had, which it seems like it's 25,000 of them. And a lot of them I knew. It
Of
was
course,
almost
from your
exhausting.
perspective, because you're an only child.
Yeah, and most only children wish they had brothers and sisters. You're thankful for
All of
the
them, really,
solitude
that
that
I've
you can
ever
have
known.
sometime, and some of the privileges you can have as an only child. But you kind of see other families with
Large family.
children. Yeah,
Hmm.
and you kind of want to be there as well. So yeah, I kind of missed that, and that's why I named this particular show. Um, you know, the brother I always wish I had. You know, and I actually had a brother, and when I met him, that just opened up a whole new world for me. But it was kind of frightening when my parents were still alive, and he would visit, and he would be by the house, and I was married to Renee then. And we were always, and she knew the story and she knew how things, and we were always worried that while he was visiting, my parents would show up. Back in
Whoa,
the day, now we call each other before we visit, but back in the day, people would just show up
that's
at your
true.
house. And
That's
we were always concerned about that. And, you know, I ended up telling Ron, well, I don't think I ever told Ron. I just, because I didn't want him to stop coming
common.
out of that, thinking about that. But it was cat and mouse there for some time because we knew certain times when my parents would pick to come after church, and sometime Ron would come down there after church, and he'd be at the house, and we'd be having a good time. We'd be constantly looking out the window, and if they came, what am I going to say? Then we have to really deal with it. But that
Right.
never happened. But Ron ended up being coming from modest means and coming from the kind of childhood. That's why I wanted him to come on here. And sorry, because I wanted him to talk about how rough it was for them. Because having someone that actually went through it's more effective coming from them. But some of the stories he told me were horror stories about some of the things they saw, they witnessed, and had to endure, or being passed around from different families. And the community, was really helped out. A lot of people really helped, when they could, as far as keeping the four boys. I think when Ruby, the mother, was still here, sometimes she had to go out to work, or maybe she wanted to go, do something on her own. And these family members or her friends would keep us. And as a grown person, I would be downtown sometimes at an event. Somebody would walk up to me and recognize me and say, I used to keep you.
Wow.
And I had a nickname. They used to call me Poonsy.
Okay.
And and they used to call me Poonsy. And they would walk up and call me Poonsy. And my parents were still living then. I was, still worried about somebody approaching me while I was around them, thinking everything was out in the open, and it wasn't. So it was like walking on eggshells there. And people would come up to me and say, "I used to keep you. I knew you. I was your mother's best friend," and and never upset me. The only thing upset me is what I just told you. I didn't want that to blend. I was just thinking about my parents'
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah.
And and on the other hand, thinking that I need to just talk to them, but didn't know how to do it. We just didn't have that. We had a close relationship, but we didn't have one of those. You sit down and air out things with your parents, especially my dad. And dads can be loving in their own way, but not all dads are like Leave It to Beaver's dad. Will sit down and just talk to you about everything. Or a lot of other
Always
dads.
entertaining. That was
You're
a
right,
perfect world that they depicted on TV.
right, right. And it wasn't like that at all. But I've seen other families where dads will sit down and just talk to their sons about sex or whatever. Only thing my dad told me is don't be alone with girls while you're in high school because things can happen. And I'm saying, what can happen? Yeah, I knew, but
Okay.
if I couldn't bring, I had to be home before some of my dates. But let me get back to Ron. And so Ron and I performed this relationship, and he was away, and anytime he came, he came down, and sometimes we get together, and he visits Sweet Wolf. He never came down here and not visit him and some other people that he knew, and a lot of times I went with with him for those visits. But one of the times he was away, a friend of mine knew uh, our cousin, was tight with our cousin. So I hadn't heard from Ron in a while. And she came to me and said, your brother got in an accident and he's in the hospital. Here's the number you need to call him. And he was working for Honeywell then. He's always had good jobs. And I think it stemmed from sometimes we are a product of our own environment in a good way. It teaches us to be resilient and to
What
be an
not to
entrepreneur.
think.
Right. That kind of life he had and working on those watermelon trucks at the age of 7, he said he always worked because if he wanted to have something, candy or whatever, he had to get it himself.
He was a
So
young
it turned
entrepreneur.
him young entrepreneur, and it turned him into somebody that was determined to be successful and lead
Not have to
that
depend
kind
on
of
anyone
life.
for anything.
Yeah. and not be a part of the endless cycle that some families end up being in. So he had this good job with Honeywell, and had an accident on there and was burnt over a good percentage of his body. He almost died then to hear him talk about it.
Was
And
it
I
40%?
think when I,
Oh, by the way, I did watch the podcast where you interviewed him back in March.
oh yeah, yeah,
So,
The-
yeah, I can reflect back to what he was saying about being
yeah,
burnt. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm so glad we did that, and I encourage anybody watching now
Yes. Watch
to
the movie.
watch that. Um, to watch that podcast because it was so telling, and some of the things that he said about that it sort of helps me now because you could see on that podcast, and he was talking about his first bout with cancer, that he kind of
Yes,
overcame
he
that.
did.
He rang the bell and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
you could see in that podcast he was at peace with whichever way it went.
He
It
seems, yeah.
he was at peace with it. And also, you remember seeing in the podcast where he was saying he got a lot of that from visiting me when I was going through my thing and how I approached that. But really, the first time I got that kind of resilience was when I'm telling you now about the first accident he had, and I called him in the hospital, and he says, he didn't expect that because we weren't talking every day. It's only when he came down. And when
Mm-hmm.
she told me that he was in the hospital, I called him at the hospital. He said that meant so much to him. And, so I kind of got that resilience from him during that time because he overcame that, and the recovery period, anybody that's been burnt like that probably will understand that recovery period,
Couldn't even imagine. And for those who
being
don't
bandaged
know,
up.
when James refers to his thing, he is a heart transplant recipient of 11 years. So
Yes,
that's his
yes.
thing that he went through. That's a big thing.
Yeah, that
We're
was a
going to
big
talk
thing.
about
And
that one day soon, too.
we're gonna get into all of that because that was an ordeal. But but he said he saw me go through that, and like most people that they come there to visit, and they were expecting one thing and saw another in me because I had accepted whatever God's will was. Who was I to you know complain about it, or i- if He had something else for me to do on this earth, He would you know, make it happen. But if it was time for me to go, so. But
He made it
I
happen.
did everything to live. Of course, we're going to do everything to live. But I could. It was out of my hands at that point, and that was his attitude. If you see the tape, so please go back and watch that tape. But
Yes, please. I think it's
but
your one on ones.
yes, it's the Slim Nation
One on ones. It
one
was
on one's
in
experience,
March.
and
I
it's
did
on
watch it.
YouTube. It's on
Yes.
YouTube under that particular name. I got a lot
Yes,
of
yes,
YouTube
you do. So let me
shows.
ask you, James, did you
Go ahead.
ever connect with your mom?
Yes, I did. Once, once Ron opened that door to the family, because I don't think she ever would have probably approached me on her own because she didn't know. And she always apologized to me for what happened, and I kept telling her
She
I
probably
don't even
wasn't patient.
remember. I don't remember, but I know the story, and I wondered how could somebody leave four boys, especially at a young age.
That was
But
her guilt.
we've had shows on, and domestic violence, can put you in a situation. It's kind of hard to believe you're leaving your children, but we don't know where she was with that, and then her intent was to come back and get her kids, but she stayed away a little too long. When she came back, the judge told her, "You have no rights now. You've been away too long." But the boys, we all accepted her back in our life, and got a chance to meet her. When she came back at first in our life, my parents were still living, so I had to keep that separation, that separation too. But
Wow.
as
So
time went on, we kept in touch, and there would be long gaps in between the time we would talk. But like I said, Ron always kept me up with how she was doing, and she was living in New York, and he would get in the car anytime and make that trip from Harrisburg, which is about 5-6 hours, to help her out and whatever, and especially in her later years when she really needed help. He finally got her to move to Harrisburg, but by that time she was, you know, at the end.
Yeah.
But she did, because she wouldn't leave New York, and he tried forever. But anyway, but that was him, taking care of his mother, even though he didn't understand or was bitter about the position she put us in. But it wasn't just her; it was also John, the father. You know, so.
Wow. Wow.
But then Ron, pretty much became my hero, because I just saw him just rise and rise, and whatever he did, he wanted to excel. He told this story about when he first was working with one of these companies that he ended up being there for about 51 years, or in that field for 51 years. Might not have been with that same company, but long time with that company. When he first got there, he wanted to advance in something. One of the white guys there told him, "Well, you don't have the mental capacity." Or you heard him tell that story on the podcast
Yes,
with
please
me.
go back and watch that. So,
Yeah,
James, Maureen Shepard says, was he the one who was there in 2017 to sing for us at our reunion memorial service, but the party at the Brown Place downtown, I can't remember. I was there,
yeah,
Maureen, and yes, he was the one. That was James's brother who just passed
yes,
away this past Friday.
yeah, Melvin. That was him that sang "You Are So Beautiful," and yeah, I found out later he could sing, and I said, "What happened to
I
me?"
remember that. And
And any
that
of
was
the
the
people
only
that
reunion I had ever been to.
Yeah, and then that was our 45th that we had, because we were losing members, and we didn't want to. We wanted to make sure we did something with the members that were still here. But and he just happened to be down here that weekend, and I said,
Wow.
if you have time, can you come over? Because he had what do you call the places in Virginia Beach? Timeshare place in Virginia
Yes.
Beach. He
Yes.
came every year, and he was down for that. I said, if you have time, can you come over and maybe sing a song? Because I
He,
knew he could
he
sing.
sang
And
beautifully.
I said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, okay. And he came over and serenaded all the women. We had to fight to get the women back. Y'all were
And
all
thank you
standing
for
in a
joining
circle.
us, Maureen. Thank you, Gwen Jones. Patricia Morgan, that's my girl. Thank you for joining us. We
Yes, indeed. Thank
I
you all
call
for.
them our FSSs, which are our favorite show supporters.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great time, and that was just Ron's nature. If you asked him to do something, he'd be there for you. And it just wasn't for me. That was anybody in the family. Anybody in the family can attest to what I'm saying there. Ron was the glue
I
that
was about
brought a
to say
lot
the
of family
same
members
thing.
together that probably wouldn't have come together. And
There's always
you
that.
know, yeah, and he would even if you needed help financially, he would come off that, and you couldn't. Only way, if you went out to eat with him, you would have to leave the table and go and pay for the meal before they got there, because he would not let you
Pay
pay.
for
I
it.
don't care how many people were at the table.
Wow.
15 people at the table, and
I know someone like that.
he would
That's
always pay, and
so endearing.
and you couldn't stop him, and that was just him sharing what he was able to accomplish, and he was very proud, and almost like you heard him say he couldn't believe that that he had gotten to that point. But it's easy to believe someone that had that kind of drive to make it to that point,
Yeah.
and to stick with a company that long and be important to that company, and something he did also on the side Well, he did it for the company at first, and then he formed his own company to do this. Was he did safety talks, went around the country to big companies, and that was from that accident he had. You know, he said, I want to help somebody else. So he would go around the country and talk to different companies and employees about safety and being safe. And one of the big things he had about um, how we can really be unsafe on our job, he was standing up in front of the audience and said, you know, everybody touch your chin. And he did like this. And people followed him and touched their cheek, but not their chin. He
I
said,
thought that
see,
was interesting too. Yeah.
yeah, see, this is what you listen, you know, instead of following what I said to you, you just following what you see me do. And, you know, and that was a point he made at every presentation that, you know, just be aware of what you're doing, you know, watching somebody, know your job, and just don't do something because you see somebody else do it, because it could be dangerous for you.
Okay, so James, we have Terry Ramsey on. He says Uncle Ron was a great man. I'm his oldest nephew.
Yeah, Terry Ramsey is one of the nephews. I think Shelby's son, one of Shelby's son, and
Okay.
Terry. No, I'm sorry. He's he's Butch's son, if I'm not mistaken. You let me know, Terry. You know, my mind is fading. But anyway, you met him, and he was one of the people too that he knows that Uncle Ron was there for everybody. There for
So
everybody.
let me ask you, James, do you think you'll be able to make the final farewell? Will you be able to make the trip?
Yeah, I think we're working on it. We're talking to my daughter. We're making arrangements how we're going to do that. You know,
Okay.
without having to do the plane thing, because I don't know what would happen if I have to do that again. And
I bet
you
it.
know,
No, no, you don't want to try that
right,
again.
right,
I have to.
and I don't want to
And
have
that
to.
is a long trip. You
Yeah,
probably would should break it up. I would think.
don't
Um,
want to have to push my way off the plane again. You know,
so
so
just off topic for 1 second. Thank
mhm.
you so much for bearing with me while I took my socks off at the beginning of the show.
Oh, okay.
And number two, when I took my glasses off at the beginning of the show, I'm just now realizing I need these glasses. It's time for me to go ahead and have my cataract surgery
Yeah,
because you are so blurry now that it wasn't this way, say, I don't know, 2 months ago. It was
yeah.
nothing like this. So, yeah,
It'll make a difference. It'll make a difference. And
2026.
Terry did say Butcher's son.
Yes, I do see that.
And sorry, Terry, for mixing it up, because I remember I met Terry for the first time. We went to Ruby's, and that's my birth mother's name, Ruby. We went to Ruby's funeral in Harrisburg. So and
So,
he's one of the tall ones too. So it's a lot of tall ones in the family.
so,
You know,
so
so
tall is
you
in your
wonder where that
DNA.
gene came from. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
So,
I end up out of the four brothers, I end up being the youngest and the tallest. But I got some cousins and everything that's right up there, and he is one of them.
and everybody's
This is
tall. Wow.
let's see if it
So,
comes. This
oh wow.
okay, and that's Johans, and Johans is actually Ron's first child, and the funny thing with Johans, when Johans, when I said Ron was coming down visiting me, and Johans was a little baby and just barely walking. And so was Jamie. They about the same age.
Okay,
And
okay.
so they got a chance to meet as babies, and favors so much. And then they met again as grown folks when I was in the hospital. But that's Johan's, his oldest son. And, you know, uh, you can see the height there too.
Yes. So if you make the trip, will you be looking forward to seeing John Jr. perhaps?
Oh, Butch? Yeah, yeah. I would look forward to seeing everybody. A lot of the nephews that I have, we stay in contact by way of Facebook. You know, they like certain things, and I follow what they're doing. You know, Monty Britton, one of Shelby's sons, retired out the military. He's visited here. He was stationed here one time. He's met Jamie, and is and then it's a Shelby Jr. Who's a teacher who has taught all over the world, and met him. Both of them came here and met us, and they've met Jamie, and that's one thing I really wanted to do, for Jamie to know these people. But strange how that happened, because I didn't know. I followed the path of my parents. I didn't know how to tell Jamie, because Jamie
Mhm.
was about college age, and she saw a picture. I think it was that picture I just showed you of the four brothers. And she said, "What is this?" She asked her mother, "What is this?" And mother said,
So you kept
you,
it from her all of that time.
"Yeah, I did the same thing. You know, like we can be a product of our environment." And I did the
That's
same
true.
thing to her,
That's
thinking
true.
I had time to tell her. But one thing, she wasn't here at the age of 3. She moved back to Memphis with her mother. So she would come down, you know, summers and holidays and things like that, and talk to her on the phone. But that opportunity never presented itself, but it
That's
should have, before she got in college. So she saw that picture and said, "What is this?" You know, and mother told
who,
her, "You got to ask your daddy."
so who these people?
Yeah, who are these people that look like you? You know, shouldn't
Who
I
these
know? Are
people?
these my, you know?
Wow.
And we were riding in the car. She was here, and she hit me with that, and I said, "Oh my God!" So I had to, you know, pull the car over and tell her and talk to her and tell her, you know, what it was, and apologize for not telling her sooner. But she, you know, because by that time I knew how important it is for my children and even my grandchildren to know, you know, their family history. So it would, and see, Jamie just,
Jamie's
Jamie
on.
is watching.
Did you see the other one from Teresa Evans? Donald's sister and your cousin? Gladys'
Oh
daughter.
yeah, yeah, and they live right here. Gladys' daughter, Gladys was John's sister, and uh, that was one of the houses we went to when Ron came to me and said he was my brother. And I think the next day or the next night, he wanted to carry me around and meet all these cousins. So Gladys's house was one of the houses we went to, and met all these cousins. And it was girls and guys. And, you know, and by that time, we had been a few other places, and I was overwhelmed. And Mary
I
was
can
overwhelmed. She
imagine.
said, I can't take anymore. So she went home, and then we continued to visit people. And then, yeah,
James, look at God. Look at how at this big family you have. This boy who always wanted a brother. Look at your
yeah,
big family.
and gain a lot of blood relatives. And speaking of that, you know, I might as well say one of my worries was too my family that I knew growing up. You know, my mother's sister had about 13 children, and they were all my cousins. So a lot of them and all different ages. So I grew up with all of them, and all
Okay.
the other cousins that I knew uh, from my mother's side of the family. She had a big family, and my dad's side of the family was small. But he had two sisters, and one of his sisters had a lot of kids. So I had a lot of cousins already. And my concern was, how is this going to work? You know, are they going to, you know, because they could have told me too, but evidently, I think it was my mother was adamant about nobody in the family telling me. I think it came up one time, but I was already grown and knew it with one of my cousins uh, that we talked about it. And she said, because actually she had I asked one time, I don't see any pictures of me as a baby. And she convinced my cousin had a baby who is the Colonel Thomas Chapman that's you used to see on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. His
Yes.
mother was holding him as a baby and convinced my mother convinced her to say that's him, say that's me, so I could say okay, there's a picture of me as a baby, and that's how a lot of that worked. But my concern was, how is this going to mix? Are they going to accept, the birth family? But they were just as accepting. I think their concern was, how was I gonna I'll just put it this way, abandon them for for my birth family. And
That's a good
that wasn't
thing.
going to happen. I was hoping that, everything would work out, and it did. And it did. You know, came down to when Ron came down, we all would get together with my cousin Betty and other family members. And I think a lot of my family members were relieved at the time, because even when I found when I found out Ron came to my house, I still didn't talk to my cousins and things about it. All they knew. How they avoided not talking about it, I'll never know. But we still didn't talk about it. But as
Those
time
were
went on,
different times.
yeah, as time went on, we just blended together. So anytime they were here, and when Ruby passed, some of the family members, of my mother's side went up there to the funeral and everything. And Ron has come down here for funerals, so he went to Memphis when Jamie's, first, he got to Memphis before me. And when my granddaughter was born, and
Wow.
she was premature, so he flew down there and got down there. I came down like a week later, and so he boasts about, she held my hand first. I said, but I'm the granddad. We had those things, and
I know you
so
are going to miss him.
yeah, we had some good time together. I wish we would have had uh, more time growing up during those formative years, especially with my with my older two brothers. Because even when I found out, we didn't connect as much. I remember all of them came to my house, and that's when that picture that was
Mhm.
at my house, and they just happened to come down, and we were all there together. That was the only time all of us were together uh, as grown people. So that I hold that picture dear to my heart. That was the only time that
I can
happened.
relate to that.
Yeah.
My family
So
was like that, so it was very rare for me and my three siblings to be in the same place at one time in our adult life.
yeah,
Yeah.
in your adult life, that's kind of difficult, because everybody, by the time you get older, everybody has a life of their own,
They do.
and that was just something that I think the two other brothers really wanted, and that's something that Ron made happen too. He was coming down, so he said, "Come on, go with me. Y'all not doing anything right now. Let's ride down here, and we can all, because it was other family of theirs that they could visit, but we can all visit Slim, and
So in
and
his
some of them
spirit,
still call me Poonsy.
you still have to connect.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
let the connectivity die because he is gone. That would make him happy.
yeah. That's gonna continue, especially with let me put up this young lady here. This is this is Anita, Ron's wife. I
Mhm.
guess this early on when they first got married, and I remember now Anita is the only child too. So when we were talking, about calling each other sister-in-law and brother-in-law, it's the only opportunity, for us to do that is to, because being only children, and that was kind of special. So
Yeah,
uh, pray for Anita and
absolutely.
the rest of the family as she goes through these times. She's
As you
real
all do.
strong. She's real strong, and I think this is a lot where strength is coming from. These are her two sons, and her and Ron's two sons. There's
Beautiful family.
yeah, Adam and August. I mean Austin. Austin is on the left, and Adam is on the right, and uh, Austin is currently serving in the U.S. Navy and stationed in California, I believe. He was stationed here for a while. I think he's about to be restationed here. So these are her strengths, and so
She's gonna rely on you a lot too, so make sure you.
yeah, she's around a lot of family, and we're gonna make sure we keep contact with her because we always because her and Benet would Benet being our only child too would make that connection about sister-in-law and things
Yeah.
like that. And Ron had you saw Johans and these two boys, and I thought I had a picture of there is a Ron Jr. out there, Ronald Goodrich Jr. And I thought I had his picture. I might have to put it up later, but he did have one girl,
Oh, she's beautiful too.
Ronielle, Ronielle.
Yeah, she's beautiful. Wow, you
So
have a lovely family,
yeah,
and my condolences to you all. This has had to have been a very different holiday season for you. Um, as you spoke earlier, we were waiting to have Ron on the show so that both of you could talk about your adoption, but obviously that was not meant to be. You know, he is in God's hands, and I'm
yeah,
glad that you were able to connect with him and have the years that you did have with him. It could be that it was meant for you to meet him at that time in your life because you both could appreciate even more the tie that you had with one another because you were mature at that time.
yeah. You're probably right in what you're saying. It might have been a little harder at because I don't I'm thinking about the high school thing, how I would have handled that because I wasn't curious enough to even ask that girl in my class. As a matter of fact, she was a majorette. Uh,
Oh, really?
you might know who she is. I'll give you her name later. But
Okay.
she, I think she wasn't a majorette until her senior year, our senior year. So I'm sure you know who she is when I tell
Okay.
you her name.
That would
But
be when I was there
yeah,
on the
yeah,
squad.
y'all probably march right beside each other. And
Okay.
I didn't have the strength or maybe just didn't know how to ask her, what are you talking about? And if I had asked then, I might have found out much sooner, but that might have been a lot more complicated, especially
Yeah.
dealing with my parents
And you
because,
may feel differently about the whole situation
yeah,
at
no telling, I mean, things happen for a reason at the time they happen, just
right.
like you just said. So we were, I was more mature enough to handle the whole situation. But come to think of it, I might have, having those dreams like that, I was kind of subconsciously waiting for something to answer why is these dreams, but nothing was really piqued my curiosity to go any further than just have those dreams and wonder, that's strange. I'm in
Well,
college still having these dreams.
again, it was a
Yeah.
different time. You
Yeah.
didn't
And the
openly
main
like,
thing to remember, once he came to my house and told me that, and I realized those dreams stopped. I haven't had those dreams since.
wow, that's amazing.
Because if I think about it now, I know they're memories, not dreams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was about to say everything now is right out front. It just
Yeah.
wasn't that way back then.
Yeah. So I will always be talking about Ron. This is him. The picture is him on the job, the Fortune 500 company that he worked for, that worked on boilers, that provided boilers for big companies and things like that. Not residential, but it was all big time stuff. And this was one of his proudest moments. And just I know we're going over time a little bit, but just to go back to that time when the guy told him he didn't have the capacity to elevate from where he was on the job. He said he was sitting down watching Walter Cronkite on the news, and that was during the space race when we were sending uh, rocket ships up, and Russia was, and China was, and he saw this thing on the news where they sent a spaceship up and they zeroed in on the astronaut that was flying the spaceship, and it was a monkey. And first, before they sent men up, they sent the monkey up there, and it looked like the monkey was driving. He said, now, if a monkey can drive a ship up into space, I can do anything. And that was one of the pivotal moments in his life that sort of added to him his drive and made him want to be the best he could. And he achieved that. He achieved that,
And I mean,
being
right
the
to the
best at
end,
his job.
I could tell that even from the podcast back in March. He had cancer, but that wasn't slowing him down one bit. He
Yeah,
was still
even
working
doing the
all the time. He was going through chemo. That's
driving
amazing.
himself to chemo
Yes, yes.
and to work. So, yeah. So
That's
he
amazing.
was, and I can't, before we go, I got to give,
Oh,
and that's now he was drafted. This is back when they were drafting all these brothers, and thank God, I think he didn't get sent to Vietnam. I think the
mm,
Vietnam War was sort of uh, winding down then, but you know, he's a
wow.
vet and served, in the military. So I want to make sure let that be known. But what a great brother he was, and he is to me, and will always be. And I'm gonna miss his trips down here. I'm gonna miss him singing. He had that signature song, "You Are So Beautiful," that he sang at all thing. If you ask Nita, she said that's his favorite song. Anywhere they go, he sings that. And also when my father-in-law passed, he came there and sang the Lord's Prayer.
Mm,
So he included himself with our family, and he just was an all-around great guy, a great brother. He used to call me little brother, and when people would, he used to boast about he actually looked younger than me. And when somebody would say, "Wow, I thought he's your little brother," and he thought that was funny, but I didn't. But not in a way, but I did think it was funny too. But uh, he used to get on me about that. But that's what brothers do.
brothers
Punch
too.
each other, and I'm glad I had that opportunity to be able to say my brother or my brothers, because I saw other people doing that as I was growing up, wishing that I had the opportunity. So these are the reflections of the brother I always wanted.
Wow. I guess
And
we'll
thanks.
get.
And I didn't get a chance to change that, uh, put
Oh,
that T in there.
it's okay. It's okay. I'm
Maybe
sure
I'll do that
everyone
after the show.
understood.
But thanks for letting me know that I was trying to remember to do other things. But
You have a
people know
lot
what I meant.
going on.
Yeah. It
You
looks
have a
like I
lot.
always warned.
I really, really appreciate your openness in sharing your story with us. It's a very compelling story, especially in this day and time and over such a long period of time. Um, I do want to, well, I'd like to lift my glass up with my Mountain Dew,
Is
and
that
I'd like
Mountain
to.
Dew? That looks like
It's
Ripple.
it, you went way
You,
back. It's
yeah,
Mountain Dew.
you you and you and Fred Sanford.
It is New Year's Eve, and I'd
Yes.
just like to say, rest in eternal peace, Ronald Lee Goodrich, and Happy New Year to you, your family, and all of our show supporters.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And this is our last show of 2025, but we will be back with
We will
the
be back
Slim and
next
Shona
year.
show. I'll take on it and just continue to support us. And like I
got some
said, we always say
reflections
we're
too.
having fun doing this. And we're going to come back. And Maureen, if you're still watching, watch out. We want you as a guest because
Yeah,
we do have our shows and feature classmates. And you saw the last show. If you didn't, go back and watch it. We had
we had
Daryl
fun.
Jordan and Edith Bowden Hill on our show, and we had a good time with them as well. But so we're going to be featuring more classmates along with the other shows that we have. So just stay tuned as we improve and get better, and just continue to bring you entertaining content and also informative content. We appreciate you. Happy New Year to everybody. And
Happy New Year.
She's going all the way. Yeah, she started partying already with her Mountain Dew. Watch out.
I will be right here in my room.
Yeah, you got somebody to drive for you. You know, that Mountain Dew.
Watching the countdown on this TV right here.
But there was a time. New Year's Eve was the party time, and
it's just so much going on in the world and in Atlanta.
Yes, well, there's sometimes when it's just blessed to see another year come in.
Absolutely.
And approaching my 11th year of a heart transplant, 2026. But we're going to have a lot to talk about. I'm sure the president will give us things to talk about. I'm sure Shona will give us things to talk about.
I just love my appetite. I don't even want my Mountain Dew now.
Yes, indeed. But again, thanks everybody. We appreciate it. And there might be some other times where I'll talk about Ron as well. There's some things that I forgot to say, but there are at least 3 videos out there that I'm glad we were able to do. We did one on Portsmouth Coffee Talk with the other hosts. I did another one at his in Virginia Beach at his timeshare, where he really talked deeply about how he coming up a little bit more than the last one, where he got really emotional about it. He talked about his mother and everything. So I'll put that out there so you can watch that as well
in the comments, or
yes,
so we can pull that up. I would really like to see that.
Yes, indeed. Happy
New Year, Maureen. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you in 2026.
2026. Wow. Okay. All right, everybody. We're going for real this time.
And I'll have some reflections too.
Yes, indeed. We want to hear those too. We want to update on what's going on with you, and maybe you can take us back as well. Not all the way back to the childhood, coming up with brothers in the house.
A year of transition for me.
Oh, yes. We want to hear how that transition is going, and hopefully you are doing a lot better and at peace, with what's going on with your life now.
We'll talk about it. So join us next Tuesday at 7:00, guys.
Okay. Do you wave before I cut you off?
See you then.
You remember the Bungles wave?
Really? I like mine better.
And the dance.
Thank you for joining us.
Let me get out of here because I think I'm going crazy.
Thank you, James. Thank you for shooting.
All right. I'll see y'all. Take care.